Hello everyone and welcome to our final week of Back to the Future, where we're talking about how travelling between the past and the present can help change the future. And we've had some really good times in the last few weeks. We met in person for youth, we had a water fight at Cruise, and we had some really great conversations in the last few weeks. And so I'm guessing you probably have a few moments from your past that were so awesome that you wouldn't mind reliving them. What moments from your past would you want to relive? Why don't you type in the comments and put what moment from your past you would like to relive? For some of us, a time machine would be an opportunity to head back to the past and relive one of our favourite moments. But there's more than one way to use a time machine. Some of us might want to use a time machine to change the past, not relive it. And last week we talked about time travel and what objects you'd turn into a time travel machine. If you were here in person, I mentioned that the watch in Harry Potter and how I would want to turn like a watch necklace into a time machine. And in that, Hermione began to use time travel so she could take extra classes in school. But when an innocent person was in danger, the time turner developed a new purpose. Hermione and Harry had a chance to turn back time in order to change the future. An innocent person was about to lose their soul, and an innocent hippogriff was about to lose its life. And that was an injustice neither of them could live with. They weren't sure what to do or how to help, but Dumbledore gave them a hint. When in doubt, I find retracing my steps to be a wise place to begin. He also gave them a reminder, you must not be seen. This has to be secret. You probably, I hope you won't ever need to time travel through life in order to save someone's life. But as we close this series, here's what I want you to consider. If you could change the future, what would you change? Would you change something that benefited you, or would you focus on the needs of others? Would you meet someone's needs even if you never got the credit? And how might retracing your steps help you on your mission? I spent a year when I was 18 living in Africa working for a charity called Hands at Work. And when I was there, I met some of the most inspiring people that I have ever met. Hands at Work supports some of the most vulnerable and orphan children in 8 different countries in Africa. And they do this by working with the local church and people in the communities. And so when I was there, I met and walked with the most selfless and generous people that I have ever met. They were men and women who served the children by cooking a big meal for sometimes over 100 children every day. And then in the afternoon, in the heat, they would walk to meet the children's family and to ensure that they had everything they needed. These men and women often lived in poverty themselves, but continued to serve and give to others, often without any recognition. I'm always so inspired by stories of people who don't need a reason or reward in order to give, help, support, rescue, or love someone else. And maybe these stories are just so inspiring because they're rare. It's far more common to see someone selfishly fighting for attention than selflessly fighting for justice. You see this on social media. When we, create posts, images highlighting how kind, compassionate, selfless, or how great we think we are. Or at school, when we pass up opportunities to love, include, or stick up for others because it's inconvenient, or it might hurt our image to be seen talking with them. Or at church, when we strive to be seen as the more good, godly, wise, or humble than others. And this isn't a new problem. We humans have obsessed with ourselves and our own reputation for as long as humanity has existed. In Jesus' time, religious people especially struggled with this, and they even found a way to make prayer all about themselves. Matthew 6 verses 1 to 5 tells us what Jesus says. Watch out. Don't do your good deeds publicly to be admired by others, for you will lose the reward from your Father in heaven. When you give to someone in need, don't do as the hypocrites do, blowing trumpets in the synagogues and streets to call attention to their acts of charity. I tell you the truth, they have received all the reward they will ever get. But when you give to someone in need, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Give your gifts in private, and your Father who sees everything will reward you. When you pray, don't be like the hypocrites who love to pray publicly on street corners and in the synagogues where everyone can see them. I tell you the truth, that is all the reward they will ever get. And verse 16 to 18 goes on to say, and when you fast, don't make it obvious as the hypocrites do. For they try to look miserable and dishevelled, so people will admire them for their fasting. I tell you the truth, that is the only reward they will ever get. But when you fast, comb your hair and wash your face, then no one will notice that you're fasting except your Father who knows what you do in private, and your Father who sees everything will reward you. In case you're unfamiliar, fasting is kind of like an advanced form of prayer. When people are really serious about asking God for something, they abstain and they stop having something while they pray. This is sometimes food, it can be technology, it could be video games, it could be caffeine, or it could be sugar. But you're giving up something for God. And when you fast, it's like you're saying, hey God, I'm really serious. I need you to listen. Please help me. Jesus mentions 3 spiritual disciplines in these passages: prayer, fasting, and giving to those in need. All of these disciplines are supposed to give you a sense of greater dependence on God. But people were misusing all of them. They were giving, praying, and fasting not to connect with God, but because they wanted attention, and because they wanted to seem extra spiritual, and because they wanted people to be impressed with them. These hypocrites, as Jesus called them, were doing many of the right things, but they had forgotten why they were supposed to do them. And this wasn't the first time in history that had happened. Do you have any favourite quotes that you love? Or it could be something motivational or inspiring, or it could be just something that makes you laugh. Again, why don't you type in the comments your favourite quote? Whatever your favourite quotes are, I'm guessing they say something about who you are and what's important to you. That's why they're your favourite. When Jesus was on earth, he would often make points by quoting prophets and spiritual leaders of the past. And over the last few weeks, we've seen Jesus quote the prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah and Amos to let everyone know who he was and what mattered to him. But even when Jesus wasn't directly quoting these prophets, his teachings would still have sounded really familiar to the people who knew what the prophets had written. Hundreds of years before Jesus spoke the words that we just read, the prophet Isaiah called God's people out for their selfishness. They'd been praying and fasting, but God wasn't answering their prayers the way they wanted. Isaiah 58 verses 3 to 8 says this: "We have fasted before you," they say. "Why aren't you impressed? We have been very hard on ourselves and you don't even notice it." "I will tell you why," I respond. "It's because you are fasting to please yourselves. Even while you fast, you keep oppressing your workers. What good is fasting when you keep on fighting and quarrelling? This kind of fasting will never get you anywhere with me. You humble yourselves by going through the motions of penance, bowing your heads like reeds bending in the wind. You dress in burlap and cover yourselves with ashes. Is this what you call fasting? Do you really think this will please the Lord? No, this is the kind of fasting I want. Free those who are wrongly imprisoned. Lighten the burden of those who work for you. Let the oppressed go free and remove the chains that bind people. Share your food with the hungry and give shelter to the homeless. Give clothes to those who need them, and do not hide from relatives who need your help. Then your salvation will come like the dawn, and your wounds will quickly heal. Your godliness will lead you forward, and the glory of the Lord will protect you from behind." Just like Jesus, Isaiah is angry at the way God's people were abusing prayer and fasting. And in this case, God's people weren't giving to those in need at all. They were using prayer and fasting as a way to boss God around. They thought that if they'd fasted and prayed in the right ways, that God would be obligated to give them what they wanted. But Isaiah had news for them. They had it all wrong. They were worse than selfish, according to Isaiah. They were committing injustice and needed to change. Isaiah tells them to stop thinking about themselves for a minute and remember what God has called them to do. So stop taking advantage of others. Loosen the chains of injustice. Set the oppressed free. Share what you have. Take care of people who are without food, shelter, or clothing, and act justly. That's what Isaiah was saying to the people. And when we choose sacrifice and justice rather than selfishness and injustice, Isaiah says God will hear our prayers and will shine like light in the darkness. Remember the mission. Do you remember what we said in week 1 of this series? When Jesus began his ministry on earth, he quoted from the same prophet Isaiah to announce his purpose and his mission to set people free. Jesus came to set people free spiritually, but that's not the only kind of freedom that Jesus came for. When Jesus and Isaiah talk about meeting the needs of others, clothing the naked, and feeding the hungry, it's not a metaphor. They mean it literally. We need to be feeding the hungry. We need to be clothing the naked and looking out for the needs of others. And when we participate with Jesus on his mission, it's not only about helping people believe in Jesus to find eternal life. It's about meeting their physical needs during this life too. So when we become justice seekers, working for the good of others, God can use us to change the future. And if you want to join Jesus on his mission, you'll need to remember the words of Jesus and the prophets. You'll need to remember the way Jesus set you free when you first met him. And you need to remember the way that Jesus continues to set you free from the things that try to hold you captive. And finally, that the mission isn't about you or your reputation or your ego. The work of justice is the mission of Jesus, and that's not easy. It won't get you a free pass to hero status. It requires a lifetime of perseverance. It can't be done alone. The call to join Jesus on his justice mission is one we all do together as God's people. And right now we're surrounded by people with real needs, both physically and spiritually. Isaiah and Jesus ask us, what will you do about those needs? Will you forget about yourself long enough to remember what this mission really is? How do we turn back time in order to change the future? How do we do the impossible without a magic time turner? We can do it by remembering the mission Jesus calls us to remember. We need to remember Jesus. He's the missing piece. If we don't keep Jesus at the centre, we'll lose focus. We'll make it all about us. We'll try to meet people's spiritual needs but forget about their physical needs. Or we'll try to meet people's physical needs but forget about their spiritual needs. We need to remember Jesus. And we've been invited to join God on a big mission to help set captives free, to rebuild what was destroyed, and to make wrong things right. But the only way we can stay focused on our mission is to stay focused on the one at the centre, on Jesus. As you listen to this next song that we're going to be playing, I want to invite you to remember. Remember who Jesus is to you. Remember what Jesus has done in your life. Remember what we've talked about for the last few weeks. And if you don't know what you think about Jesus yet, that's okay. Try praying this really, really simple prayer. God, what do you want to say to me? What do you want to say to me? Jesus calls all of us to remember, but remembering isn't just a one-time thing. Remembering who Jesus is, what he has done, and what his mission is should be a daily discipline. We need to remember for ourselves because it's easy to lose focus and wander away from Jesus. And we need to remember for others because other people still need to find freedom in Jesus. And they might need a bit of help with finding him. We need to remember for the whole world because there are so many wrong things that have yet to be made right. And so if we are going to be part of God's mission to end injustice, we need Jesus to take us back to the words, stories, and moments that remind us our God is a God of justice. And if you've ever felt like you've lost your way, ask God to take you back to Jesus. Ask to be taken back to the day that you first encountered his love for you. And if you ever feel like you've lost focus on the mission, or you feel like you couldn't possibly keep fighting against injustice, ask God to take you back to the days when you believed it was possible, because it still is. Jesus wanted us to remember that God has always been on a mission to make wrong things right, to set people free, and to make a way for people to know God. Jesus wants us to join God on that mission, but it starts by remembering what that mission is. Jesus calls us to remember. Take some time now to reflect during this song. And thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.
All I see is the battle, you see my victory. When all I see is the mountain, you see a mountain moved. And as I walk through the shadow, your love surrounds me. There's nothing to fear now, for I am safe with you. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees, with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And if you are for me, who can be against me? For Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you. When all I see are the ashes, you see the beauty. Thank you, God. When all I see is a cross, God, you see the empty tomb. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees, with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadow, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadow, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees, with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet. I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Oh God.